Today on the podcast, we're going to be looking at podcasting. What is podcasting? How do you get into podcasting? Why should you start a podcast? How do you start a podcast? All these kinds of questions. And the reason why we're going to look at podcasting today is because, the podcast is becoming much more popular. And so lots of Nigerians are becoming aware of the podcasting medium. And people are curious about how to get involved in podcasting because, it sounds exciting. So these are some of the things that we're going to tackle today on the show. Hello and welcome. My name is Tabashima Ayede. I'm the host of the podcast, making today's recording at home, so there will be noise in the background. Even though we're talking about podcasting today, primarily I'm interested in solving business problems. So if that is your jam, then subscribe. Spotify, YouTube, Apple, or any player of your choice. And if you'd love to connect, you can call. Send me a text message or a WhatsApp message on 080-6466-2140. So, like I said, today on the podcast, we are talking about podcasting. And the reason why, like I said, people have questions. Podcasting is becoming even more popular. And there is one listener of the show. His name is Joshua. Shout out to Joshua, by the way. I won't use your surname to protect your identity. So he reached out to me. I give my phone number at the beginning, at the end of every episode. He sent me a WhatsApp message. He said he had a couple of questions about podcasting. And so I told him, sure, no problem. Let's talk next week. And I told him, send me a reminder. We agreed on a time. By the way, if I agree on a time with you and I tell you, send me a reminder, this is me putting the ball in your court. Because, to be honest, there are other things that I do. I have coaching clients and I have paid consulting gigs. Once in a while, I have speeches and appearances, things like that. So when I say, okay, you and I can chat, I don't now want to assume the mental burden of trying to make sure that meeting holds. So to be honest, I push the responsibility off to you. So if we agree that we're going to talk in 2 weeks and I've given you a day and I've given you a time, it's up to you. If you don't send a reminder, it's up to you. Because we're having a nice, free, casual chat, I cannot now assume the mental burden of doing otherwise. So it's not as if I'm trying to be rude, or it's not as if I'm trying to feel as if I'm a big boy or like I've arrived. It's not big manism. I'm just looking at things from a very practical point of view. So we will agree to these meetings. They won't be on my calendar. It should be on yours, and it is your own responsibility to follow up. And so, yes. Oh, and by the way, it's also a test. It's a way to separate the wheat from the chaff, to see who is serious and see who is not serious. Because there's some people that will say, send me a reminder, 2 weeks will pass, and then I'll be like, oh, that's true, I should have, spoken to this person. But if you can't say a reminder, that's up to you. So it makes sure that I only spend time with people, who are serious in the first place, because they know how to keep to commitments. So Joshua, he sent reminders over the course of maybe like a week and a half, and then finally we had the conversation not long ago. And while this thing is fresh in my head, I say, let me just grab this microphone. I just vomit everything one time. So, where are we? Podcasting. Now, Joshua is in the business of developing websites. He's a front-end developer. And he has had some clients in the past that have often put him in sales roles and things like that. And so because of that, Joshua wants to start a podcast where he can share his knowledge, share the things that he has come across in reading business books. He's currently the COO, that's Chief Operating Officer, of another founder startup. And he's in the process of moving from Port Harcourt to Lagos. That's where all the dreams are made. So the podcast that he wants to start could be anything around self-development, sales, entrepreneurship. It's going to be a business podcast. And once in a while, he will talk about things, economics. So that's the scope. That's what he wants to do. And once he said all of this, I was like, this is precisely the reason why I wanted to have this conversation with him. Because there are lots of you who want to start a podcast, excuse me, and you guys have wonderful ideas, beautiful ideas about the podcast, because yes, the idea is going to work. But the thing is, podcasting is hard. Because podcasting is hard and it requires a lot of commitment and creativity, lots of people who start a podcast actually fail. So there's some people who say there are over 4 million podcasts. I can't remember whether it's 4 million, I'd be 14 million or 40 million. Anyway, whatever the number, people say that there's tons of podcasts. And they're correct. Because yes, podcasts, them boku. If you don't believe me, open your podcast player and then type in Nigerian podcast. You will see all of us plenty. Many. But then if you check one thing, how many people are actually podcasting every day? You now see that and those of us that are still in the game were very few. Which is the reason why if you search for Nigerian business podcast or Nigerian sales podcast, honestly, you won't find more than 5 or 6. If you narrow it down to sales, you will only find 2. There's me and there's Paul Fo. Not because we're the best, but because we are the only ones that have continued. Paul Fo's been doing this since 2019, and coincidentally, I started mine 2020. And we haven't stopped. So if you check sales podcast, you will see that there are plenty. If you want to see people who are publishing in all of Nigeria, 2. The only 2 of us remain, me and then Paul Fo. So the goal is not let me start the podcast. The goal is let me remain in this, let me sustain the habit of podcasting. Let me actually build up a valuable asset on this thing. So the goal is not to start. The goal is to stay in the game. So that's why I wanted to have these conversations, because beautiful ideas aren't enough. They don't mean anything. How are you going to execute the idea? That's the main thing. Then I also wanted to have a frank conversation with him that I'm going to have with those of you who are thinking of starting podcasts, because I know there's at least 100 people listening right now on this particular episode that are thinking, man, podcasting is cool. I want to start a podcast. Let me be frank with you. The way I look at it, there are 2 classes of people who start a podcast. There are missionaries, and then there's mercenaries. Let me repeat. We have missionaries, and then we have mercenaries. Now, missionary are people who are talking for love of the game. So for those of you who listen to Christian podcasts, particularly podcasts that are built around apologetics, was Jesus Christ a real person? Was he a historical person? Was he mythical? What is the gospel? How does the gospel relate to today? Why does anything exist? Is God the metaphysical foundation for all the things that exist? What do we know about God? What are the characteristics of God? All those big questions. People who make those sorts of podcasts, those ones, they are missionaries. Now, of course, we know that missionary is Jackie work. Jackie work means no salary. The work is the reward. Which is why if you can support any of those missionary people, I beg, help them. Because, they also have children. So they also have school fees. They also have house rent. So once in a while, reach out to those people and say, bros, I feel you, I heal you. I beg, take this small contribution. But missionary work is Jackie work. Those people are doing it for the love of the mission. They're not asking us for anything. If we can help them, let's help them. Then there's mercenaries, people like me. People who are starting a podcast because we want to make money. We pick up the microphone because we have a plan that in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the goal, we have a plan that money will start coming down the pipeline. I repeat, you are either a missionary, you're doing this for the love of the game, or you are a mercenary, you're doing it for money. Either way, we have to be clear from the beginning. The problem is, some people start off as a missionary, but then they are not clear. And then they're angry after year 2 that they're seeing some people make money, and then they're wondering, why am I still doing all this? Be clear from the beginning. If you're a missionary, if you're doing it for the love of the game, then let the love of the game sustain you. And don't be angry when you don't get money. Being frank here, being really frank with all of you. If you're a mercenary, then that is what will keep you going. On the days when you feel low, you remember that, I have a 3-year plan. That is how I want to monetize. That is what will keep you in focus. So that by the end of year 1, when you're shaking and you're hungry, you say, you know what? I see light of the end of the tunnel. That year 3, I will achieve breakthrough. That's what will keep you going. But you have to be very clear. Are you a missionary or are you a mercenary? So that's the first conversation that I asked him, that who are you? Are you a missionary or are you a mercenary? Is this for the love of the game or is this about money? Be clear. If you want to be talking about business because you're doing it for the love of the game, then do it for the love of the game and let that love sustain you forever and ever. But don't be angry. Because eventually, I'm going to buy my Benz S-Class. So don't be doing it for the love of the game. You now see me in my S-Class and you now start getting angry. No. Be honest. So we had the conversation. He started sounding one kind. I told him, look, you can't say it's both. And I'm telling you, please, you can't say it's both. Pick a lane. You're either a missionary or you're a mercenary. Eventually, it turns out that, it's money focused, but in this part of the world, people question money motives. And yes, I understand. If you have money motives in this part of the world, people look at you as a greedy bastard. But to be honest, the thing is, so long as you're an average Nigerian person, there's nothing to worry about because you can be money focused, but then, life is multifaceted. So money doesn't permeate everything. So yeah, some of us are greedy bastards and we want to make that money. But the thing is, I'm also a father, I'm also a husband, I'm a son, all kinds of things. And, money can't enter into every single aspect of your life. It can't. So long as you're an okay, normal person, you're good. Now, there are some psychopaths who see everything in terms of naira and kobo. Those are the people who they will let their momsy die because, as far as they're concerned, momsy don't old. Why would I waste money? Her time don't reach, all those kind of things. So long as you're not one of those bastards, you're all right. You're good. So don't be worried about being money motivated because life is multifaceted. And no matter how much you like money, you won't always think of money. You won't always. So don't worry to pick a side. So that's why I told him. And I'm telling you too, don't worry about picking a side. So let's say you're a girl listening to this podcast. And maybe from your tribe, your culture, your age, you're expected to be cute and demure and something. You're not supposed to tear eye. Your eye is not supposed to shine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with loving the money. Loving money and pursuing money does not mean that your eye will tear so much that you will lose your morals. I don't think that will be the case. I don't think those kinds of babes listen to this kind of podcast. They don't. So you want to start a podcast and you want to be mercenary about it, no problem. It's not a problem at all. It's not a problem. So I told him pick one. So it's clear that I want to make money because he wants to build a personal brand and he also wants to create distribution for products and different ideas that are going to come down later on down the line. And I say, beautiful, fantastic. You have a target. Now we can start having some serious conversations. And I had to tell him that, look, you're trying to create distribution for products that will come in the future, Abi. The guy said yes. So what that means is we're going to have to do audience building and community building with the podcast. And I told him, let's be realistic about time frames. Audience building and community building is a long-term play. I've said it on the podcast before. I'll say it again. When it comes to traditional business, maybe now times have changed. But back when I was in school, of course, before the internet era, people used to break business timing into like 3 stages. There's short term, there's mid-term, and then there's long term. I repeat, short term, mid-term, long term. Short term is usually 0 to 1 year. That is short term. So in other words, if you start your business in January and you hammer in December, you will think it was a long slough. Actually, it was not long. That you are an overnight success. If you start in December, you blow in December, you're an overnight success. Because that's very short term. People don't do that. People don't start business on day one and then in less than 12 months, they don't arrive. They pull up in a grand style. So that's short term. Then medium is, or mid is 2 to 3 years. I repeat, mid is 2 to 3. This is the old way of thinking about it. I don't know what professors say nowadays. Then long term is 3 to 5. That's long term. Right? So when we were in secondary school doing business studies, that is what our teachers taught us. Short term, 0 to 1 year. Mid is 2 to 3. And then long term is 3 to 5. Now, audience building, community building, there's no audience building and community building that happens in the short term. Not possible. It's not possible. There's some people who do it, but there's some other factors, behind. Like Donald Trump, you see that the guy kind of built an audience, sharp. But, that's different. He already had a brand beforehand and, he already had traction on a couple of things. So when he announced and he entered into politics, he could quickly coalesce a certain audience around him. But the thing is, you ain't Donald Trump. So, except if you have a couple of things working for you, just give up that you can now do short-term audience. It's not going to happen. You're not building an audience in less than 1 year. Let's be realistic. So, if the gods of business smile on you, you're probably building this audience that's to the stage where you can monetize. It's probably going to take, 2 to 3 years. So I asked him, are you okay with that? Not seeing progress until year 3. He said he is. That's okay, good. Now, worst case scenario, 3 to 5. Are you okay with not seeing any kind of progress until year 5? Are you okay with that? He said, okay. Some of you will say, Tabishima, what's wrong with you now? Like, why are you slowing this guy's roll? I'm not trying to slow his roll. I'm just being frank. And I asked him, do you know Gary Vaynerchuk? He said, yes. I said, fantastic. I'm glad you know Gary Vaynerchuk, because Gary Vaynerchuk is very, very public about this, that he made his videos, Wine Library, the daily videos. He said he did it for 5 years straight, every single day. Didn't miss a single day. Me, I've missed some days. But he said he didn't miss a single day. He did it for 5 years straight before people started to notice. Did you guys hear that? Right now, Gary Vaynerchuk is a big boy. He's what do you call? His media agency, and they collect like 400M every single year, dollars, not Niger. But he recorded videos every single day, 5 years straight without missing a day, before people started to take notice. In his own words, things didn't start to pop off until about year 8. Imagine that. You set up this thing. It's supposed to bring in money for your Popsy's wine business. But for 5 years, they see shishi. It is until year 8 where the thing starts bringing in money. This is the kind of patience that is required in this game. Long form content production. This is the kind of patience that is required. Now, it mirrors my own experience. Because the first 3 years, I only had 5,000 downloads. I repeat it. I only had 5,000 downloads over 3 years. I started getting serious about promotion and distribution. And then in another year or so, I was able to get to 15,000 downloads. But it's taking me 5 years and a couple of months to get to 50,000 downloads. And I didn't get my first inquiry for business until about year like 3.5. That's the first time somebody reached out to me to say, oh boy, what's up? How far? How much? Are you available? What can we work out? It was not until year 3.5. So I'm being frank with you here. So have your expectations right. All of you who want to get into podcasting because you think podcasting is sexy, you like the fact that you're hearing my voice right now, you think I sound cool, you want to have that same effect, it takes a while. Then Joshua said he wants to talk about sales. So I asked him, okay, cool. Have you sold before? He said, yes. I said, what's your experience? We spoke about where he has sold. I said, okay, no problem. Because 2 things. Number 1, there's lots of crappy sales content out there where people are talking about sales. Meanwhile, they know nothing about sales. They're just giving their own idea. And that's rubbish. And so I told him, you got to be grounded before you start spitting on the mic. You have to be grounded. Because it is the right thing to do. It is the honest thing to do. And then I told him another thing. The problem with long form content is that it lives forever. It lives forever. You make it, the thing is out there on the internet. People can see it. People can judge you by it. You quickly want to take it down. It's a problem. Some people don't download. Some people don't screenshot. That thing happens all the time. There are Hollywood people who get into trouble for all these sort of things. You put something out there. There's more controversy. You want to delete it. Next thing you see that people don't screenshot. So yes, you deleted the post, but people can still see what was there. They can still hear what was there. So you will mess yourself up. Mess yourself up seriously if you go around talking about things that you don't know, because people will call you out. They do. Trust me. I get challenged on stuff. You said this in episode so and so. I disagree. But then I can have that conversation with the person because I know my stuff. I know my onions. And I cannot even come back and say, you know what, that previous podcast episode, perhaps I didn't explain this properly. These and these and these are the other ways of looking at it. And these are other things that we have to consider. So only pick up the microphone and talk about only what you know. Number 1, because it's honest. And because number 2, if you're bullshitting, people will call you out straight. It's like Toke Makewa, for instance. Her first podcast was on relationships and all that. When her marriage with her husband ended, people begin to drag her anyhow. And, it's understandable. You're talking about relationships. You now find out that your husband, they do you one kind. So just talk about what you know. I'm not blasting Toke Makewa. In fact, I love her. I love her spirit. And it's not because, she went to the same school as my wife. I just love her spirit. Her tenacity. She don't try. She's been in the game for a while. So I respect her. So me, I'm not dragging her. I respect her. But only talk about what you know. Because if people think you're bullshitting, they will call you out. So I told him, be honest. Be honest with yourself here. Only talk about what you know. Or else, there's trouble ahead. Then, okay, expectations now. We now know that if you're entering into this podcasting game, it's not for 1 year. We're talking 3 to 5 years, at least, before you can say, I tire. I'm giving up. 3 to 5 years at least. So those of you who are listening now, you're being seduced by the sound of my voice. Realize that this is not a 1 year game. This is not a 6 months game. If you start podcasting in January, by February you say, oh my, I don't tire. You are not serious. You have not started. Just know. I'm making this podcast because I'm receiving lots of these questions. I just want you to know. Before you ask me a question, I want you to already know where we're heading. By the way, you want to start a podcast, you reach out to me, you want my guidance and everything. Like, yeah, sure. I'll take your money. I'll help you start off the podcast. But at least I'm telling you ahead of time, this is the amount of work that is required. So that tomorrow you won't say Tavishima led you astray. I told you ahead of time, this is what is required before you gave me money and before we started this journey. If everything doesn't work out, it's on you. It's not on me. Then we also now had the other conversation about distribution and promotion. And I told him that, look, when you said distribution and promotion, my heart was glad. My heart was singing. It means we're on the same page, because this game is also a game about distribution or promotion. In other words, if you're making something and you're not sharing it with people, nobody will hear your stuff. And I told him this is the reason why. Things go on all the time. You make a podcast. The podcast is dope. But then before you know it, Donald Trump drops a bomb somewhere, Then, media, people begin to debate left and right. And then Middle East, Gaza will drop a bomb. People will now start debating. And then in Benue State, stuff will happen. I'm from Benue State, by the way. In Benue State, stuff will happen. People begin to debate Fulani versus this. Then Peter Obi versus Tinubu. And then a scandal will break out. You will now hear that some Hollywood celebrity was found, in an affair with another Hollywood celebrity's life and whatnot, wife. And then before you know, stuff is going on. The internet is crowded. This is the world we live in. You now record one podcast episode and then you put it out. You expect that people will flock to your podcast episode. They won't. There's more interesting things to look about, to listen to. So you have to promote. You have to constantly push to be out there, to have an opportunity of being heard. And people say that I promote excessively. Of course I do. It's the only way people will hear my stuff. Let's be honest. I'm making this podcast episode today about podcasting. Let's say I drop it today, and then today, Kim Kardashian announces that she's reconciling with Kanye West. You think people will listen to my podcast over Kim Kardashian and Kanye West? Let's be real. Kim Kardashian reconciling with Kanye West, that thing will carry the day. Maybe the thing is even that she's reconciling with Kanye West and she's now pregnant for triplets. Forget, that thing will carry the day. Nobody will hear my small podcast. I have to promote excessively. I have to, or else nobody's going to hear. So, if you're starting a podcast, be ready to promote this thing. And I had to tell Joshua, now look, if you're going to promote your podcast once every 2 weeks, you're not serious. You haven't started. At least you have to be promoting this thing every day. If you say you're going to be promoting once a week, no problem. I know two shouts, because I understand. Coming up with ideas is hard. But man, be ready to be promoting this thing every day. Be ready. People will not flock to your podcast. That's not how it works. Now, there are some people who already have star power, they already have some traction in other areas and who can get a following. Trust me, if Donald Trump should start a podcast today, his podcast will be top 10. Today is Monday. Before the end of the week, if Donald Trump starts a podcast today, before the end of the week, his podcast will be top 10 because he is Trump. The same thing with Tinubu. If Tinubu should start a podcast today, before the end of the week, his podcast will be top 10 in Nigeria because he's Tinubu. It's just how the world works. Unfortunately, some of us have not achieved either in politics or movies or, whatever. So we don't have that kind of clout. And I told him that that's part of the reasons why Obama's wife, their podcast, that's the reason why I was successful. No, the pre-launch was not too, You just give small pre-launch. Coming soon. Within 3 weeks, podcast drop. Next thing, podcast top 5 all over the world. Yeah, of course, because she's Mrs. Obama. That's why. So for the rest of us, distribution, promotion, die on a daily. Or else, nobody is listening to your podcast. I'm being frank with you. But like I said, you still want to start a podcast. You still want me to advise you, to help you, stuff like that. Yeah, sure, we'll talk money. And I will take your money. But the rest is up to you. I'm telling you what needs to be done ahead of time. So whether your podcast succeeds or not, it's on you. I'm telling you what is required. So promotion now. You got to promote. Die. My own opinion. Daily. You need ideas on how to promote your podcast daily. That is what ChatGPT is for. Use it to come up with ideas. If you want to go let me just manage route, okay, no problem. Promote it once a week. But just know that promoting your podcast once a week means that in 1 month, you have only promoted your podcast 4 times. Please realize that. If you're promoting it once a week, it means that in 1 month, you have only promoted your podcast 4 times. Do you really think that is enough to get a podcast or a business or a whatever going? That you only promote this thing 4 times in a whole month, in a 30-day cycle. Only 4 times. Because some of you will say now that promoting every day is excessive. I'm being real with you. If you want to start a business and you only promote your business 4 times in a month, you really think that is enough to get your business going? Reason think it. Then, and I told him, you know what, we now have our expectations straight. Now, the next thing is this. People who want to get into the podcasting game, next thing they start talking about equipment. Which microphone, which laptop, which memory card, which this, which backup system, which everything. And I told him, look, I don't want to hear anything about equipment at all. The time for equipment will come. Your primary assignment now is something called content calendar. I repeat, your primary assignment now is something called content calendar. Content calendar just means, what am I going to be saying on this podcast? Who am I going to be talking to? How am I going to be talking with them? What is the cadence? We will be talking every day, every week, every month. By the way, if you want to do your podcast and say you're only going to be podcasting every month, you are not serious. You have not started. The people that have been calling now, Kim Kardashian, what's his name? Kanye West, Donald Trump, who else? Peter Obi. If Peter Obi decides to start a podcast, if people like that want to podcast once a month, that's no problem. They already have some kind of clout from other spheres that will carry over. People will listen. If Peter Obi is only podcasting once a month, people will listen. They'll say, today is 1st of October. Uncle B's podcast drops on the 7th. They will listen. You are not there yet. That's the reason why people like Tony Robinson and Oprah Winfrey can drop one episode, once a month, but people will still flock and their podcast will still rank because it's them. So if you say you're only going to be podcasting once a month, you are not serious. You have not started. The ideal cadence, I'll leave that up to you. You don't have to be a maniac, like me, podcasting, 3-4 times a week. But just know that once a month, you are not serious. You have not started. So, content calendar. What are you going to say? Who will you be talking to? What is the tone? What is the style? How often will you be talking to them? That is the main thing. Because that is the reason why people's podcasts die. Because you start the podcast in January, you don't think through about your content calendar, what you're supposed to say, who your audience is. And then in February, you are tired. You're like, I have to think of another thing to say again. And then you say, body no be wood. I can't come and kill myself. Let me rest. That your 1 week rest will enter 2 weeks. That your 2 weeks will enter 1 month. That your 1 month and 1 day. In 3 months, somebody will ask you that, BC, how far now? You haven't recorded your podcast. You say, I beg my sister. And then that's how your podcast will die. So the first thing is not to start asking me a question about equipment. The first thing is content calendar. And this is my own honest opinion. If you can't come up with a content calendar, do not start the podcast. You will waste your time and you will waste your money buying all this fancy equipment. If you can't come up with a content calendar, things to say, in my own opinion, I say come up with one for the next 1 week. I say 1 week for 1 year. The reason why I say 1 year is because at least it will reduce the mental load. You'll be able to be calm that, you know what, I've already thought of what I'm going to say for the next year. You'll be able to relax and to start your podcasting game. If you can't think of content calendar for 1 year, don't even start. You're wasting your time. How do I come up with a content calendar? That's not a problem. There are lots of podcast episodes that I've made in the past to give ideas about that. And by the way, it's now easier that we have ChatGPT and Gemini and all these things, but we'll talk more about that later. See, those of you who want to start podcasts for business purposes, I hope you guys are hearing now. You're in business, no matter what your business is, whether it's fashion, or whether it's consulting, whether it's logistics, or whether it's tech, you want a podcast to promote your business, you're thinking, how do I enter it? I hope you're hearing the things that you need to be paying attention to. Too many of you are going to go and book a space, buy the building, buy the microphones, buy the lighting, buy the whatever. Meanwhile, you have not even decided on content calendar, what am I going to say? You now buy all this equipment, and then you know, I was wondering, oh, what are we going to say in this podcast? Who are we going to interview? Please, content calendar is the main thing. Forget equipment. The time for equipment will get there. And I repeat, if you cannot come up with a content calendar, do not even start. Don't. So that's the gist of all the things that we spoke about basically. He now had some questions. That's where we had the money conversation. And I told him, look, my brother, I understand. In this part of the world, you talk money, money, money. They will say, this guy no get focus. I understand. They'll look at you one kind. I say, is everything, money? Like, oh, I thought you came from a good family. Why are you sounding like... So I understand. I get it. But like I say, don't worry. Life is multifaceted. So nobody is about money 100%. Nobody. So don't worry. Then he also had questions around hosting. And this is what I told him. Hosting is where your files are going to live. Your audio files will live on the internet. I wanted to know my idea about one particular host, Buzzsprout. This is what I'm going to tell you. Don't look at things from one provider versus another. Though somebody will say Buzzsprout or Spotify, which one is better? That's the wrong way to think about it. In my own opinion, first of all, we think about free versus paid. The best services you're going to get are with those where you pay money. I'm sorry, my brothers and sisters, but that is just life. You want good quality treatment, go and pay for it. That's just it. I'm sorry, it's how it works. So from the beginning, you either have a budget or you don't. So that's why I say that's the best way to look at it, free versus paid. Then, when it comes to paid, we can start talking about, other things. But let me leave that paid conversation. Then there's free. My own podcast, I host it for free. I'm on Spotify, and I'm not paying Spotify shishi. In fact, that's why it makes me wonder sometimes, Spotify, how do you guys make money? How do you monetize this thing? Because we're listening to music for free. I'm hosting my podcast for free. As far as I know, everybody free. So, how do you guys make money? I guess it must be the people in the West, who pay for downloads and everything. Maybe that's what's supporting all this, I don't know. But sure, I'm hosting for free on Spotify. Now, when you're on free, you also now need to check. Some people are free, like Spotify is free. Then there's some people who are free for a time. Free for your first 100 episodes. Free for the first 3 months. Free for the first 1 year. You need to know those people. I wanted to do free. So I now started looking for free options. Then, when you're now at the level of, free options, now distribution is also another important thing. Because remember, distribution is the name of the game. It's not enough to record these things. People need to find you. People need to hear you. So we now have to start worrying about the reach of the other platforms. And that's the reason why I'm on Spotify. Because Spotify has reach. And Spotify, whether you like it or not, they're the ones that own Nigeria. If you're able to get your song to blow on Spotify, you will blow in Nigeria. That's just how it works for now in 2025. If you're listening to this podcast in 2035, of course, things would have changed. But right now, Spotify is where the reach is. And by the way, when I started, it wasn't called Spotify, it was called Anchor. And that is what Anchor promised. Anchor promised distribution to other platforms. So you host your podcast on Anchor, and then they will go through the pains of making sure that your podcast shows up on iTunes, on Buzzsprout, on Google Podcast, because there used to be a Google Podcast player everywhere. And so that's why I picked Anchor, because it was free, and then it had the distribution that I was looking for. So that's the reason why I'm here. So you can see that this is how you think about it. Don't start saying, should I do Libsyn or should I do Spotify? Should I do Buzzsprout or should I do Podbean? No, that's not how you think about it. So first of all, ask yourself, do you have money to invest or not? If you don't have money, look for the free options and look for the purely free options. But I've already told you, and I'm saying it again, the people that have the best deal are those who are paying. So like for me, for instance, Spotify can wake up tomorrow and say, Mr. Man, we don't like your podcast. We deplatform you. Be gone. They can delete all my episodes. And there's nothing I can do. The most I can do is I can go and cry. I say, what kind of base is this? Why are my uncles hindering my progress? That's the only thing I can do. Cry and pray. For those of you who are with other people like Libsyn, nobody can deplatform your podcast. You have paid. And if you want to say what you want to say, you will say. And nobody will cancel you. It's a paid service. So I'm letting you guys know up front that the people who have the best deal are actually those people who pay. Then, for the people that pay, they also have backup for the audio. So, if your computer crash and, everything, you can go and call these people and say, hey, Libsyn, how far now? Should be you guys don't back up my episodes. I beg, I need from episode 1 to episode 350. They will give you. The source file is there. But Spotify, I don't have that treatment. If anything happens to my podcast today on Spotify and they say, oh boy, we don't like you, we deplatform you, or there was problem, and then episode 1 to episode 976 is missing, because I have 1,200 episodes currently. So if Spotify said that episode 1 to episode 967 is missing, there's nothing I can do. Nothing. All I can do is cry, and all I can do is pray. That's all. If it's missing, it's missing. So honestly speaking, and I'm saying it too, I'm pulling my ear as I'm talking now. You should be listening though. Unfortunately, you get what you pay for. So when it comes to hosting, if you want the best treatment, go and pay for it. But by the way, I hope you still hear what I said. That for me, I'm not paying. I'm doing this free. The time will come when I'll migrate to a paid platform. But so far, 1,200 and something episodes, and I'm all right, and I'm okay. So you can do this thing free, and you can rough it. So that's on the question of hosting. Then what else did we discuss? Anyway, we discussed plenty of things actually. Then there was a scripting. So this was my advice to him, and this is my advice to any of you listening right now. On this question of scripting, they follow people, they argue back and forth. Because so many people argue, which one is best? Should I freestyle? I want to be authentic. I don't want script. I don't want, don't join them. Don't join them. Don't poop out in that kind of thing. You're wasting your time. Because the truth of the matter is, any podcast that you like is scripted. Any podcast you like is scripted. The thing is just that we have different definitions for what a script means. So Joshua asked me, script or bullet points? And I told him, it doesn't matter. Pick whatever it is that you like. But the most important thing is never carry the microphone unless you have decided ahead of time, this is what we want to talk about. If you grab a microphone, you didn't think ahead of time, your podcast is not going to fly, because people value their time. If you just pick up a podcast and you're just saying whatever comes to your mind, after a while, nobody will follow you. Nobody. Now, there are some podcasts that are in a certain genre, like, stoner podcast. That's where two people come, you sit down, you smoke Igbo, and as the spirit leads you, you just be saying anything. Now, sit down is different. That's a stoner podcast. So people will sit down, you plug in your headphones. As the host is lighting up the Igbo, you light your own Igbo, you just be spliffing, and as they are saying things in the spirit realm, you'll be feeling it in the spirit realm because you yourself, you're high. So that's a different thing. But for everybody else, never pick up a microphone and record unless you have asked yourself ahead of time, who am I talking to? What am I saying? All these sorts of things. So if you look at that from that point of view, every single podcast you like is scripted. This particular episode is scripted. I'm not reading from a script, but I have a bullet point. I had a conversation with Joshua. From Josh, what we said in Joshua, these are important things that I think other people need to know who are starting a podcast. And then I'm now freestyling on that. But can you see that there's some order to my thought? So if the kids were here and they made noise and everything and blah, 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 I'll be able to pause. And once I settle quarrel, okay, they didn't too cut themselves. There's no blood. Okay, and he cracked his skull, but he will survive. I can just come back and then press play and continue. Because there's a list of questions and I'm still on track. Every podcast you like is scripted. So stop engaging in all these debates. Everybody they script. Because everybody either has bullet points or questions, or people have a script that they're reading word for word. Now, this is why I told him about word for word. And I can say this because I grew up in a media household. Momsy and Popsy both used to work with NTA. Momsy would later on become a marketing exec. My father would later on work with National Orientation Agency. That used to be MAMSA. The like government education and propaganda arm. Now, people like my mom and my dad, who were journalists and who were trained, they have been trained in this thing. You give them a script, they can memorize it, and then say it back beautifully, flawlessly. It is their training. My mom studied theater arts. It is their training. For someone like me who does not have that training, you want me to carry a script, memorize it, and give it back to you word for word, I will fumble. I will sound like an idiot. I will sound incoherent. I will sound not prepared. If I pull it off, I will sound like a robot. I do not have that training. Same thing with my dad. He's dead, by the way. Rest in peace. Until we see again. Same thing with my dad. And all his colleagues. They have been trained. If you do not have that training, if you're not a trained performer, then please do not try this thing of a script that is read out word for word. You will sound flat. And that is the problem that I have with some podcasts like NSG, that's Nigerian Economic Summit Group. The host of the podcast, unfortunately, the guy has a set of questions and he always reads the questions word for word. He never deviates. It doesn't matter who he's talking to. He never deviates. That thing is boring. If you're not a trained performer, don't do it. Please. Don't. And I said, Joshua, which one do you like? He said he prefers bullet points. I said, okay, fantastic. For those of us who are not trained performers, that scripting thing will not work. You will sound flat. But either way, just know, don't be arguing with everybody that is this a script or is this not a script. Every single podcast you like has some thought and has some preparation behind it. Put some thought and some preparation behind it. Whether it is questions like I do, or bullet points like some people do, or a script that is written out and that is performed. If you're not a trained performer, then don't bother with that. But the thing is, every single format works. For those of you who are interviewing people, like on the Nigerian Economic Summit Group podcast, the NESG podcast, where they have lots of people there, people in economics, people in finance, people in politics, that kind of show. Don't just read your questions robotically. If somebody says something, lean in. If somebody says blah, 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 Tinubu's economy has been the best for Nigeria, don't just move on to question 2. Lean in. You say, oh, really? Is that what you think, sir? I say, oh, yes. I say, oh, care to explain? The person says 1 or 2 things, follow up, challenge him on something. Or, but shall I keep the conversation? If you do your podcast like how NESG does their own, Nigerian Economic Summit Group, by the way, if you're interested in these sorts of things, please go and listen to the podcast, the NESG podcast, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. Then there's also Nigerian Politics Weekly. So please listen to all these other podcasts out there. Let's broaden our mind. But if you want to do like NESG, you just read it like a robot. You're boring half the people. Anyway, so 44 minutes. Let me bring today's recording to a close. I think that was just it pretty much. But bottom line, for those of you who listen to this podcast, you think it sounds cool. It is. It is pretty cool. It's cool to meet people who value your opinions, who love to know what you think, and people who pay you money because of your expertise. So believe me, it is very cool. It is very cool. And the thing is, I haven't even blown yet. I am not even a top. I don't even think I'm a top 100 podcast globally. So by the time I even get to that level of being in the top 100 globally or top 50 globally, man, it's going to get even cooler. So it is cool. Just make sure you have the right expectations about what is required to get into the podcasting game. Which is why whenever people reach out to me and say, hey, I want to start a podcast, I say jokingly, let's talk. Let me discourage you. I'm not actually trying to discourage you. I'm actually trying to make sure that you have what it takes to succeed in the podcasting game, because it's not an easy journey. So you want to talk? No problem. Hopefully you've listened to this episode. I'll keep answering questions for as many people as possible. And like I said, we'll fix a time in the future, because you reach out to me today, we just can't talk today because I've got lots of stuff going on. You know, I have school fees to pay. I still want to buy a nice Benz class for myself, tinted, AC tight, Also have to get some for wifey, because she's been a very supportive wife. And then my kids keep asking me questions. When are we going to travel? When are we going to see Uncle Seve? Uncle Seve is my brother. He lives abroad with his kids. Keep asking, when are we going to travel? When are we going to see them? So it'd be nice to be able to travel, maybe 2 times a year. So that would be cool. Shall just, travel whenever we feel like, you know what? It's been a while. Wifey, more pack bags. Let's be going. So it'd be nice to be able to live that kind of lifestyle. So because of that, if we talk today, I can't have a meeting with you today. I'll put a time in the future. But just know, the responsibility for keeping up with that time is up to you. Not because I'm feeling like a big man or anything. It's just that, I'm already juggling lots of commitments. So it's up to you to keep that time. If you miss it, you miss it. And it's not a problem. If you miss it, we can try and reschedule. But to be honest, if after 2 or 3 times I see that this person is not serious, I'll start snubbing your message. So far, there's only one person that I've snubbed, because truly, that guy is an irritant. So, of the 50,000 of you that have listened to the show over the last 5 years, I've only snubbed one of you. So I don't think I'm doing too bad. So, thank you very much for your time and attention. Remember, if you'd love to connect, you can call, send me a text message or a WhatsApp message on 080-6466-2140. Thanks for your time and attention. I will catch you next time. Same place, in your headphones or in your speakers, wherever you listen to the show.